My name's Alex Tavares. I'm 25 years old and I'm from Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Awesome.
I, whoa, where did I start? I mean, I feel like I've been bouncing a ball since I could walk. I had like the little Tykes toy
Yeah.
hoop and everything. And then in Portsmouth, they had the Connie Bean Center. The old center was where I played in my first 5-on-5. And first through fourth grade, it was just, you know, for the fun, like of the game. Like I loved it. I loved how quick it was and I could excel, Like it just was something that I was so passionate about.
Nice.
I think when I was in like third grade, I did this summer camp for the first time.
Okay.
And I was at York High School. I don't even remember, the players or the staff at the time.
Sure.
But I remember the following year, I was in fourth grade, and you know, I realized that was when I was like, okay, this could be something that I'm good at. And
Mm.
so then it was like I kind of dedicated myself just to basketball. I was playing baseball and football, but it wasn't where my heart was. Like my dad
Sure.
always kind of pushed me to try all the sports, but
Mm.
basketball was just something that I felt like 24/7 I was either watching or playing.
Yeah.
And whether that be on any scale. And when I was just getting around to like middle school, that's when I was playing at Portsmouth Middle School. I was doing like the integrity hoops, summer
Okay.
camps and whatnot. Even before that, I was doing True Champion. I
Okay.
was doing all these camps and whatnot, and doing like these 3-on-3 tournaments. And I got approached by Dustin Freeman to play for New Hampshire Elite. And
Yeah.
that's where I was playing AAU for, he was my coach for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And uh, I mean, it was at that time, I was also at Portsmouth. And I mean, being under, during my middle school time, I was under Jeremy Ciotti and Steve Arnold. And then
Sure.
the Mulvey program of Portsmouth. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with Jim, and then my senior year, Johnny was that was his first year of being the head coach,
Right. Right. The movie
and
dynasty. Yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
it was an amazing run. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
I
I wanna dive a little bit deeper on some of those, I
yeah,
guess, thresholds that I think about. So what was it like, if you can remember, like you talked about first through fourth, kind of Portsmouth rec. What was it like coming out of that to like the fifth grade league? I assume you probably played with what elementary school did you go to?
I went to Little Harbor,
Okay.
and at the time
Yeah.
we had two separate teams because we
Okay.
had an abundance of people that wanted to play basketball,
Yeah.
and I feel like a word that you use just then is thresholds, and that's something that I talk about all the time, and how
Mm.
there's all these different levels to basketball.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a jump because you go from only playing people in, your area to now that's the first time you might start playing other schools. You might
Right.
start experiencing, a higher level of talent because every time that you get through one of those thresholds, people are a little more serious. They've been playing a little bit longer.
Right.
And I feel like that was the first time that I really got to experience what it meant also to want to win something. Because when I
Mm.
was in first through fourth grade, I don't know how they work the rules now in Portsmouth Rec, but there was no playoffs. So you had a regular season of about 9 or 10 games, and then that was that.
Right.
But fifth grade, you had your regular season, you had your playoffs, there was a championship, there was a winner.
Right.
And I remember we came in, uh, we lost in the semifinal. We were playing the other Little Harbor team. So you can imagine, how dramatic it was at the time. And
Sure.
I feel like it really kind of set the tone for then what was going to be middle school because when we went through this system, it was like the schools that we played in elementary school, we all now went to the same school. We all now went to Portsmouth
Right.
Middle School. And
Yeah.
then even then, so in middle school, we might go play some of the other surrounding towns and cities, but it's very, you know, conserved to just the seacoast, I feel like.
Sure.
Um, Whereas then, even when you get into that next threshold of when you're going from middle school to high school, these guys that you were just playing against are now becoming your teammates. And
Right.
it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. No, I often think about it like a pyramid, right? They got all these kids spread out at the bottom, like all the different elementary schools, and then it gets skinnier at the top. Is really what we
For
talk about.
sure.
It's
For
like it's
sure.
harder to make the team, harder to get playing time, and but yeah, like it's kind of an upside down funnel. That's what you're talking about. All the best talent ends up playing together at the high school level and can be really dynamic when they've
Oh
had
yeah.
experience all the way through. Did you ever have a team where you got cut or you were close to being cut, like through your middle school years?
Through my middle school years, I can't say that that was ever a struggle of mine.
Yeah,
Um,
like you were
I
into
was
it.
very developed and I was very in love with the game. I feel like
Yeah.
when I was in middle school, that was when they first just had built the new middle school, the new Connie Bean Center,
Okay.
and we were given access to that gym for
Mhm.
hours on end after the school day had ended. And
Yeah.
I feel like I was the kid, that was just in there. I would
Mhm.
set up the chairs and the cones, and other kids are in there, playing games and whatnot, gossiping. But
Yeah.
meanwhile, I just knew in my head that I had a goal,
Mhm.
and there were other people also that kind of got drawn to what I was doing. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of my a lot of my workouts that I had in middle school formulated relationships with people that I was going to middle school with. And then by the time we're in high school, we're teammates
Mhm.
and, we have that on court rapport already.
Yeah.
In terms of my on the court struggles, I feel like that I didn't really foresee any um, issues with making a team, finding my way on the court, and having an impact on the game until my college years.
Okay.
That's where the game really evolved, in
Yeah.
a sense for me. Just
Sure.
because of where I'm coming from, I feel like I was such a dynamic player in a sense of where I feel as though that the New Hampshire basketball, NHI AA basketball is so X's and O's, so skill driven and so um, oriented around a system where you're having players fulfill a role and then working through your motion of offense that I was
Yeah.
able to get plugged into a system that I had been introduced to by the time I was, you know, 12, 13, 14. Okay, now I'm, a freshman in high school. I've already been doing this. I've already,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It all kind of worked its way to the point where I would go into the gym and I'd be working on my game and I'd put myself in just these isolated situations that would be a component of our greater motion so that I'm getting my reps of, okay, when I'm in the game, this is exactly what my catch is going to be like. This is exactly what my reads are going to be.
Right.
And once
That's
I
a huge asset. Yeah.
right? Once I implemented that early on, I was able to then utilize the fact that I was a bit bigger, I was a bit stronger, and a bit faster than a lot of people. And then I was just kind of reading and reacting. I
Mhm.
also had I mean by the time I was in high school, I also had one extremely talented team. I mean,
Mhm.
Portsmouth team for this current season, this 25-26 year is going to be
Yeah.
very, very talented.
Right.
Um, but I've already been hearing it compared to the championship run that we had in 2018.
Yeah. I remember some of the guys on that team, and yeah, so that just brought up the thought. I guess what I've seen most successful programs have is the continuity of system. What I just heard you talk about from the middle school level all the way up through the high school level. So, like when you were coming through middle school, was Jim Mulvey at that time like engaged with the middle school coaches and like, hey, this is our system, and like at least
I
to your
don't know
at that point,
necessarily.
yeah,
I don't know necessarily if it was in the forefront, but from behind the scenes, there had to be conversations about,
yeah,
this is what principles we want Portsmouth
right,
basketball. Because at the end of the day, it's the greater umbrella. I feel
yeah,
like I feel like at this point, Portsmouth has somewhat of a somewhat of a culture around it when it comes to developing players that are able to I mean, if you're from New Hampshire, you have to be able to catch and shoot. And
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be able to be put into an offense where you can defend on and off the ball.
Yeah.
And that was really instilled into us is to be able to be a threat from anywhere on the court so that that 1 through 5 almost felt interchangeable.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire basketball, it's very rare that you're going to have many 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot plus players.
Right.
And because of that, the offense gets very spread out. You have a lot more quickness. Does the dimension of the game change? Yes, but at the same time, the adaptability of the players will then prevail. And I feel as though that kind of goes to show why New Hampshire college basketball is the way it is. And I feel like when you look at the biggest differences between, say, Division 3, Division 2, Division 1 basketball in any league anywhere, the guard talent is typically all there. The
Hmm.
guards, the people with the ball in their hand, they have the ball handling, they have the shooting capacity, and I feel like New Hampshire basketball is really good at breeding that. They're able to take players and put them in a position where they're interchangeable. They're able to know how to cover certain rotations on and off the ball, and then in defense, get a stop, run in transition, and then if there is no, if there is no quick hitter, then it's time to run something. I think
Sure.
the biggest thing that New Hampshire basketball to me um, is different in a sense also is the fact that there's no shot clock. I feel as though
Yeah.
that adds a completely different dimension to the game
Yeah.
where you're then able to almost, in a sense, fine tune your offense to really be able to pick apart a defense and wait and wait and wait for someone to make a mistake.
Right.
And the more guys that you have kind of bought into that, and the more threats that you have on and off the court, that's just kind of how it
Yeah.
all formulates.
Yeah. I want to come back to that when we get to your college years because I want to definitely dive into that. But first, I
Yeah,
want to ask, how young were you, or what age were you when you first thought like I want to play college basketball? Like when did that thought occur?
man. I want to say when I was 14,
Okay.
because that's when I started realizing that, okay, my education's important. Basketball is very important to me. I want to be able to play it as long as possible. And I
Hmm.
had heard about how it was an avenue to be able to continue playing.
Yeah.
Um, Really, the idea was introduced to me by Dustin Freeman, my AAU coach.
Okay.
And we had a group of guys kind of from the New Hampshire Seacoast and a little bit of a greater area. Um, and uh, we all kind of bought into this idea that if we wanted to be able to get some spotlight, if we wanted to be able to do something with our basketball career, that we needed to almost join forces. It's like all the guys that I was playing against each other during the regular season of
Yeah.
NHIAA, we would then in the springtime all get on the same team and all have the same goal of trying to
Right.
just get as much exposure as possible to the basketball world because
Yeah.
for the most part, it is definitely more um, Massachusetts, Boston area that gets a lot of that traction. And I feel
Right.
like we went to Massachusetts quite a bit. Um, we went to the Rim in Hampton. That was definitely a facility that we played out a lot. But we were also going to Connecticut. We were going to Pittsburgh. We had done all this traveling,
Yeah.
and that really like kind of opened my eyes to, whoa, this is how much experience I'm able to gain from this sport.
Sure.
And to also be able to then formulate those connections with those guys, people that I still hang out with to this day,
Nice.
and see, crossing paths, just it's a small world. And I feel like the basketball world is even smaller.
Right.
And so then you take, just the area of kind of Portsmouth and I feel like that was just kind of my way of wanting to be seen. I feel like it was kind of my way of saying, this is who I am, this is what I love, and I'm gonna do everything it takes every day
Yeah.
to get where I want to be, because why not?
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. So, what was kind of the biggest eye opener for you? Like, I always think of, New Hampshire and even Portsmouth is like the epitome of a small pond, right? And so, like, you would
Yeah.
be what I would call a big fish in a small pond, and then you join forces with these guys and you go play, other states, other cities where there's a lot of talented basketball. So, like, coming into that at 14, like, what was the biggest eye opener for you about like how big the basketball world is of talent out there?
I mean, for me at that age, when I'm graduating middle school, I had just um, kind of completed, and I was in the middle of my first AAU season, and I would say that was a big eye opener for me.
Sure.
That's kind of what set the stage for me to then go on to play. And also that summer, I was playing in New York quite a bit. I was playing in Massachusetts quite a bit, going down to certain parts of Connecticut with this team, and then we'd play. I mean, this was just a pull from teams. We were playing teams all over the Northeast,
Yeah.
and I think that was the first time I had ever seen someone, that I'm playing against do a dunk that I'm used to, seeing on YouTube. You know what I mean? That
Sure.
I'm
Right.
seeing players just shooting threes off the dribble that I had never defended before,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was the point where I was like, okay, now this is where separation occurs.
Mm.
And I just kind of bought into that. That's where I feel like that experience of almost being, getting caught off guard is like, okay, I need to now with that knowledge, with that experience, prepare to have a
Mm.
greater impact on the game.
Yeah.
And so then I just kind of took those skills, I took it into our open gyms, and our Portsmouth open gyms were very intense. We had a lot of intense scrimmaging with stops and, going over and correcting. And a lot of the time I was, that summer 14, I was about to be 15. Our preseason, I was turning 15, and I'm guarding, uh, all-state 6'5", 6'6" guy and Joey Glenn.
Yeah.
And at the time he was, putting up numbers that were undeniable. There was no one that really could stop him.
Mm.
And every day, to be going against him, I think that that's really where my my grit kind of had to come in. And I feel like a
Mm.
lot of stuff um, that transpire on the court, it also reflects, what's going on off the court. And I feel like
Mm.
real early on when I was doing these camps, there was this one camp that I did, and a coach had said, "You ever notice how when you're playing basketball, that everything else kind of goes on pause, that everything else tunes out, and that you're
Yeah.
you're just completely invested into that moment." And
Mm.
I bought into that, and I kind of ran with it, and
Mm.
it became something greater for me. And
Yeah.
and when I was going to these open gyms and not doing well, I mean,
Mm.
I would go and I might hit a three-pointer here and there and get to the rim and get fouled, but they're not really gonna blow the whistle. But I'm giving up bucket after bucket after bucket, and just thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to impact this game?
Mm.
And eventually, I just I kind of in my mind, and it's crazy even talking about it now because these things that I was going through then, they relate exactly to where I'm at now. And
Mm.
they're the exact same. It's almost like history repeats itself. There's just these different thresholds. And
Sure.
so back then when I'm 14, 15, I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know, I had people in my ear telling me that there are things that I'll never be able to do, that there are things that are unobtainable and that I need to be more realistic. And one of those things that was really, you know, kind of, I don't know, just made a point to me was that I needed to be prepared to play basketball at any level. So that
Mm.
I'm graduate. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. It doesn't matter what your numbers look like. That I needed to mentally prepare to be playing on the freshman team, on the JV team, or on the varsity team. That I needed to put myself in a position to be able to succeed at all three of those levels.
Mm.
And then as I just continued to kind of gain my confidence, the coaching staff had me swinging a bit during the first half of the season. I was very distraught because there I was. I thought, oh man, varsity, like here we go.
Mm.
And first, I want to say 10 games of the season, I don't think I played a single minute. I would just go and I'd play the first half of the JV games and then I'd warm up with the varsity and then I'd just sit on the bench.
Right.
And I didn't lose my I tried not to lose my focus though because I knew that if I stopped working as hard as I was, or if I lost any of my determination to be the player that I wanted to be, that I wouldn't be granted that it felt like a privilege then to be
Yeah.
on that team and to be even sitting on that bench. It
Mm.
was it wasn't until the championship game. So we're playing, I think we were playing against Bishop Girton.
Yeah.
Or no, it might have been Bishop Brady. I don't remember.
Okay.
We were playing Bishop Brady in the semifinal game, and I go in at the very end of the game. I thought this is at UNH. This is the first time I had, really played in front of a crowd like that. And
Yeah.
I'm, I get the ball, and I remember there's only a couple minutes left. It was a wrap, and I'm like, nah, I'm going to score. I score. I get fouled, and one. And I'm
Mm.
thinking to myself, like, okay, like it was like that feeling, like the roar feeling, like, the chance of like, oh, he's a freshman, like that to me, that was like, okay,
Yeah.
there it was all over again.
Yeah.
It was like right as like everything, was I was feeling all that pressure. It's like all of a sudden there's just the prevail.
Mm.
And the sports I feel like have a really funny way of doing that. Of really just testing your patience and then all the work does pay off. It was then the championship. I had that confidence. I carried that bucket with me into this game. And our three man gets into foul trouble. We're standing there, we're all like, okay, we need to do something. We only had 10 guys on the bench.
Mm.
And the coaching staff looks at me, and this was the earliest I had gone into a game all year. I had never touched the first half of a
Yeah.
varsity game up until this point,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure right off the bat, I was on my rotation. We had sent two to double the ball on a baseline drive, and they tried to dump it down to the big, and I intercepted it, took one dribble, passed it up to my teammate Cody Graham, another 1,000 point All-State tremendous player,
Yeah.
and we ended up winning that championship game.
Wow.
And that was my first undefeated season in high school, and I was feeling like, okay, this is great,
Yeah.
this is awesome. But then there were these talks of no, now we're going to move from Division 2 to Division 1,
Mm.
and we were like, okay, like let's go.
Mm.
And most of the team was coming back from the previous year. We had lost one guard, and I had moved into that starting slot as a sophomore. So I went from being this, big fish in a small pond in just the Portsmouth area to then experiencing like that AAU and that freshman year of not really playing a lot to
Right.
then now I was back in the driver's seat and I'm starting, and what I do in this game is going to have a real impact because starting for Portsmouth meant that
Mm.
in a 32-minute game that I was probably going to play close to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember I remember preparing that summer and it was a lot of catch and shoot. I had to know my role, and I feel like that year I really had to almost conform to being a 3 and D player where I'm catch and shoot, I'm crashing the glass on both ends, and I'm defending, one of the better players.
Hmm.
And I was able to then, you know, make more of a little bit of a name for myself. We had just gone undefeated again. So now this was the end of my sophomore year, hadn't lost a game of high school basketball.
Wow.
And there was some talks about going to prep schools and reclassifying. And
Mm.
what ended up turning out was that there were just certain things that were transpiring because life happens.
Mm,
And for my situation, I had to end up staying at Portsmouth. And I wouldn't trade that because then, we go on my junior year to win another state championship.
yeah.
And it felt like that was something that felt impossible.
Mm,
And my senior year, I was the only senior on the team,
mhm,
and I think I was leading the state in most of the statistical categories. It was,
mhm,
it felt like meant to be. It felt like it was going to be that four championships in 4 years. I felt
mm,
like I was going to lead the team there. We were like this underdog. I had
yeah.
uh I had set the I had set the record this one game. It was single point against Bedford. And at that point, this is when I started to realize like, okay, like basketball is still what I'm capable of. Because throughout like all of this time of all this winning and all of this experience and playing and going, I felt like there was a lot of stuff that was affecting me
Mm,
when I was then having to make decisions for what was next and have to make decisions for, how I was going to live my life. There's a
yeah.
lot of there was a lot of outside influence and a lot of decision making that I could have done better.
Mm,
And, it's just kind of one of those things also where I feel like I was put into a position, excuse me, I feel like I was put into a position where I was able to almost be like this iceberg. Like everyone sees, you know, my basketball career and they see me in my uniform and they see me
yeah.
doing these great things. But then they also what they don't see is that okay, whatever's going on off the court isn't getting him any Division 2 or Division 1 looks.
Sure.
And there was this real kind of reality that I had to come to terms with. And so there I was losing, major awards to players that I had beaten in the playoffs, to players that I had more, um, points per game and rebounds per game and assists per game than. But to me, I felt as though that if we could just win, that was everything. Like, then
Mm,
it wouldn't matter
yeah.
because at the end of the day, that was what was most important.
Mm,
And we ended up that year. That was the year that Exeter took off Salem, and Salem had previously bested us.
mhm,
And so I was in a real difficult spot. I didn't know what was about to go down. I didn't know where basketball was about to take me up until this point in time, basketball was to me my entire ego, my entire life. It was what comprised my existence.
yeah.
And now for the first time I'm thinking to myself, what's next?
Yeah.
And it was when I initially got pushed by my family to go to college because they wanted me to get a bachelor's degree regardless of whether I was playing basketball or not,
Okay.
that I ended up taking Plymouth State University up on allowing me to be a part of their team. And I had a bunch of Division 3 offers, but
Mm,
but realistically, there was only so many schools that I could go to based on financial aid and FAFSA and based on the fact that the Division 3 schools, they don't have the capability to give full athletic scholarship.
right.
And I ended up enrolling into Plymouth, and within, I think, my first month or two of being there, I was playing pickup, and that's always how it starts, right? I was playing pickup,
Right.
and
That's
and
how a lot of stories begin.
and I
Yeah.
ended up I ended up injuring myself,
Ah,
and missing that entire year. I had to redshirt,
wow. Okay.
and it was that spring that the pandemic started.
Right.
So
Mm,
now we go from I graduate high school. We fast forward nearly 2.5 years later,
okay.
and I haven't played in a competitive basketball game, whether
Wow.
that be because everything was shut down
Right.
or because everything, in my body was broken.
Sure.
Um, by the time things started opening up and restrictions were loosening from the pandemic, I had made a phone call to Coach Alex Burt, the
Yeah.
former head coach of Great Bay Community College.
Right.
And we spoke for probably, I called him out of the blue. I mean, I think I got his
Mm.
number and I texted him and he said, yeah, just give me a ring.
Yeah.
And we spoke for a few hours, just
Mm.
talking about what we wanted to do with Great Bay, with the basketball team, with the program, how we wanted things to look,
Mm.
and what we thought was possible if we put you know, our work into something together.
Yeah.
And he took me aboard, and I think it was his fourth year coaching there at the time, by the time I was a freshman there. And with that one pandemic year in there.
Hmm.
And they, I don't think had made the playoffs before. We ended up ranking 15th nationally in the USC double A for Division Two, and losing in the semifinals of the Yankee Small Conference. And
Okay.
it was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah.
We had a solid team,
Mm.
but it was just kind of it was my first time really experiencing college basketball. Like I had seen it,
Mm.
but playing it is a completely different dynamic. And I feel as though that it wasn't until my second year there that things really started to click. My assist to turnover ratio went from close to one to closer to three, and I was able to um, take my 3-point percentage and become the number one 3-point shooter in the Yankee Small Conference.
Nice.
And that was really from just going and having access to facilities and be having access to you know, these teammates and these coaches. And Great Bay was just an amazing experience all in all. I
Awesome.
I feel as though that that program really was able to come together. I feel like by the time that I was in my second year there, we had a mix of guys from the previous year's teams. We had some new talent, guys like Theodore Wolf, Kinsley Breen, and Keith Landry. And we felt good about ourselves, and we competed, and we made it to the championship, ended up losing. And
Right.
then by
Remember that.
we're driving back from Central Maine Community College, which is in Augusta, Maine. It's about, a few hours. And we get back to Great Bay in Portsmouth, and everyone's pretty down.
Mm.
And we had these two vans. We're in the second van. So this first van goes in and parks, and we're in the second van coming in. And everyone hops out of the first van and there's hands in the air, cheering, screaming. And we're like, what is going on? Why are they so happy? Like, we just lost. We just lost a
Mm.
championship game. What are they
Yeah.
hollering about? And they
Right.
go, we're going to Virginia. Like, we got the 10th seed, and we ended up being able to
Wow.
go to compete in the USC AA Division Two national tournament.
Nice.
And that was such a great time for us
Mm.
because I think all members of that team got to see that if you have a group of people who believe in something together, and we all did, and if
Mm.
we all put our minds together and our hard work into something, that it'll turn into something.
Yeah.
And I feel like the silver lining there is that, we didn't win. We didn't
Yeah.
win the championship that year, but we were still able to go and have that experience.
Right.
And it was from doing the right things day in and day out and ensuring that we were the best that we could be when it
Mm.
came to game time.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was through that experience that then I really was like, okay, basketball is what I want to do. Like I realized that it was almost like in my head, I'm like, okay, like I always heard that saying, if you love something, let it go. And then
Mm.
if it comes back to you, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And that's really what it felt like
Lucky then.
basketball had did.
Mm.
And when I was having my exit meetings with Coach Burt, he's telling me that there's all these Division II schools, all these NE10 schools that they want me to visit. They want me to, you know, they want me to talk to them over the phone. And I
Mm.
said, Coach Bird, I'm a man of my word, and something that I said to him on that very first phone call, way back before we had played 2 seasons together, was
Mm.
that I wanted to play Division I basketball.
Mm.
And so he reached out to his connection at the UNH coaching staff,
Okay.
and they got back right away, and they said, "We want nothing to do with him." Talking about me. And
Wow.
I was like, all right, word. And I
Okay,
just
thanks.
said, I
Yeah.
said, let's just stay patient. Like I felt as though that there are certain things that, when my gut tells me something, I just gotta listen to it. And I like to put all my eggs in one basket. And I've been told that I'm very optimistic, that I'm very passionate, but I feel as though that, manifest destiny, I'm just gonna give everything I got into what, it is that I want.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
I think a week went by and the previous coaching staff to UNH gets fired.
Okay.
And and so now they're hiring Coach Nathan Davis,
Yeah.
and he hires his new coaching staff. Coach Burt reaches out, and Coach Davis asks for my film in response right away.
Mm.
And I think at this point in time now, so you know, we were playing in Virginia end of March, April, May. It's now, those conversations are being had.
Hmm.
June and July roll around, and I'm just kind of shooting messages back and forth with the coaching staff. We're just checking in on the process. They're getting to know each other and whatnot.
Mm.
And then I think it was right around mid-July that the staff, Coach Nathan Davis, had invited me to have a meeting with him and his staff. Um, and so they took me in, and I sat down, and it was a one-on-one with Coach Davis at first, and then he stepped out, and then Coach Jimmy Allen, Tyler Wilson, and Lou Guzman came in, and we all had a chat. And then they stepped out, and Coach Davis came back in, and we were talking, and just getting down to, what it would look like. And that's when I ended up receiving, the position, I want to say about a month later. So it wasn't until like,
Mm.
I feel like that's when I really kind of got the job, but they didn't even tell me until um, like August. Like
Wow.
it was so March until August, I didn't know
Yeah.
where I was gonna go to school. And so all of
Yeah.
it was me. Like
Mm.
I applied to UNH through to the business program through Great Bay's I forget what it's called, their
Mm.
NH program that they have. But um I was kind of doing everything to put myself in a position where I could be a part of their team.
Yeah.
And um there's one day I was out. I liked to go out and ride on a longboard, like a skateboard almost, just
Okay.
long distance. And I ended up missing the call from Coach Davis because I was out on one of these rides,
Okay.
and I get back and he's telling me, we'd like you to be our preferred walk on. I
Wow.
said I said okay, great. Like, when do we start, And
Mm.
I'm emotional as could be.
Sure.
And
That's huge.
it was a big win for me because
Yeah.
that's another one of those things that people told me you're never going to do.
Hmm.
You're never going to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
that was as big as I could for a long time, for a very, very long time, from really most of my life. That was as big as I could see, myself was going to UNH and then being, there and
Yeah.
playing basketball there.
Yeah.
And that experience then, as much as I wouldn't trade it for the world, 32 games, I think I played 20 minutes. And
Wow.
so it's really, to me, I'm a bit of a religious man, and I think to myself, that if you ask God, you know, to listen to what you have to say. What do you think your plan is? If he asked, what do you think your plan is?
Mm,
And you told him your plan, he would laugh. And
sure.
I think it's because
Mm,
I was put in this position where this was as big as I could dream for myself. Like this was everything to me. This would have been the bucket list. This was the only thing on the list.
yeah.
And if I had gone there and then if I had been, you know, the number one option and we had won everything and we had done this and that, then what is the rest of my life? And what's
Mm,
the rest of my basketball career? It just didn't align with where I was coming from and where I'm supposed to be and where I
mm,
see myself. I was in a position where I was never meant to be there. I don't think that New Hampshire takes, you know, or even just in a sense, there's not in a if you want to think about the statistics, I don't feel as though that there are many players in general, let alone from New Hampshire, that have the opportunity to be a member on a Division I team. And so for me, like that experience alone, like to
yeah.
be able, like those are also connections with people that, you know, I feel like just the other day I was talking to one of my teammates from UNH and you know, guys like Clarence Daniels and Jackson Baker, like players that, you know, I feel as though once they get going, they can't be stopped.
Yeah.
And that was for me the probably the experience that opened my eyes the most in terms of what basketball really was and what kind of player I needed to be
Mm,
and what it was going to take for me to be successful and what it just gave me a grasp really of reality. It was a reality check because
sure.
our
It's
very first game of the season,
another threshold in a lot of ways, right? It's
right?
like, wow, this is Division I college basketball is a pretty different game than anything underneath that.
Well, our very first game, BJ, was we went to Syracuse, New York, and we're playing Syracuse in the
Yeah.
JMA Dome, and so I'm, you know, we're on this bus and we're going there, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is insane. Like,
Mm,
I'm so ready,
yeah.
and I didn't, you know, we didn't get the win. I didn't get a single minute.
Mhm.
I had some family drive out
Mhm.
to catch the game. And
Yeah.
then one of our other players didn't have their jersey and they were number 2 and I was number 22. And so I was asked to give him my jersey.
Oh
And
man.
so I'm just like, yo, I'm like,
That's like
this isn't happening.
that's
You
like
know what I
vinegar in the
mean?
wound right there. Yeah.
No,
I'm not
it
touching
was
the
a tough
floor and I'm giving you my jersey right now. Wow.
it was a tough wake up call.
Yeah.
But then through that season, I feel as though that as much as I had to, as much as I had to bring myself into my own strength and my own inner kind of working
Mm,
to be able to proceed through that season, I was put into a position where every day I knew that I was going to be battle tested better than any other area that any other gym, any other there's nothing that I had better access to. I
yeah.
was
Right.
I was every single day going into the gym and making it a point to myself to be the best shooter on the floor and to guard the best player on the other team every day, whether that was Jackson Baker or Clarence Daniels. Mind you, I'm only 6'4", 6'5". Those guys are 6'7", 6'8".
Yeah.
And at the time, you know, Clarence Daniels, he was the America East Player of the Year.
Right.
And and I knew that if I could if I could just continue to work in certain drills and certain plays and get reps with Clarence and going against Jackson and going against Clarence, that I would then be able to my body would have to rise to that occasion. Something would have to adapt
Yeah.
because I knew that if the same thing happened over and over, that something was going to change. And
Yeah.
so so that I would get taken out of that position. But then
Mm,
throughout the entire year, it just seemed as though that was becoming my role was that I
mm,
was I was a 3 and D player.
yeah.
And it's almost as though like once you enter a threshold, you go into your role and then I feel as though that the game just continues to expand the more
Mm.
comfortable and the more that you develop as you then continue to branch yourself out into these spaces.
Yeah.
And and when
Mm.
I'm in this, NC this because this is my first time playing in the NCAA, I'm in this setting. I just had to tell myself that, you know, the 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 investment in myself was going to be from this year, that this is going to be what got me where I wanted.
Mm.
And eventually it did. I was able to land a full scholarship to Southern Wesleyan University in South Carolina.
Okay.
Essentially, during the pandemic, I took a semester off during the pandemic. And because of that, the NCAA did not give me a COVID extension to my Division I eligibility timeline. And
Okay.
so therefore I had to transfer Division II because they have different rules based on semesters
Mm.
as a full-time student.
Okay.
And I still had two more semesters where I could play, do another season Division II. I ended
Yeah.
up transferring to Southern Wesleyan University. And I'm really just a 3-and-D guy. So then there's 2 years in a row where I have new coaches, I have completely new rosters and new teams and new coaching staff
Yeah.
and two very different situations.
Sure.
A very low budget Division II, private Christian university, and then UNH, which is not, high major, but it's definitely a a bigger school relative to the other schools.
Right.
We have so many in New England.
Hmm.
And for me, I was put in these positions where I was just battle tested, my patience, my ability to believe in myself and just continue to work on my game and let that prevail. And
Yeah.
remember, just I had to remember that I wasn't, no matter how good I was, back in the day or in high school, how much we won, that didn't mean anything now. The
Mm.
only thing that matters is how I'm developing as a human being and how I'm becoming a better basketball player
Yeah.
so that because I think it's hand in hand almost like the more that I invest into myself, into my health, into my state of mind, into my experience, into my knowledge on this planet, I feel like the better basketball player I become.
Yeah.
And that's really what I was seeking.
Mm.
And and I knew that through going to UNH that I had given myself an opportunity now to be able to sell myself
Yeah.
to certain opportunities. And it was when I was at Southern Wesleyan that I was then having a lot of thought of, okay, I'm gonna go pro, I'm gonna go overseas, I want to continue playing basketball. I want to keep,
Yeah.
going through these thresholds.
Right.
And
I
when
want to hear more about how that transition happened, but I had two thoughts while you were just talking about the college years. I guess one is a framework I learned from a business coach named Dan Sullivan. He talks about the 4 C's cycle, which is commitment and then courage and then capability and then confidence. And it's kind of like a cyclical process. And like, I guess two stages that you just described that fit that really well. Is one is cold calling Alex Burt after 2.5 years of out playing a game, just like, hey, what's up? I want to play basketball again. I'm committed. And like, I guess from what you described, I would see it as like very humbly saying, I'm going to go down to this community college just to play because I love the game. Right? A lot of people would have said, hey, I was at Plymouth. I'm already a college elite basketball player. Like, don't talk to me unless you have, a D1 offer for me kind of thing. And so being humble and committing, like, hey, let's lock in with Alex Burt and go play 2 years. And then again, I would say you went through that cycle, and 2 years later, you're like, I'm committed to play Division I, and I'm going to be completely patient and courageous and wait for 6 months while UNH fires their coaching staff and talks to me over 2 months before I get any sign that I'm going to get a chance here. And then the second thing you just brought up, which is really important, is that I'd say, unlike most players, when they get to college, they think they have already invested and now they want to be paid off when they get to college. You took the mentality like, I am here to continue investing. Like, I'm here, it sounds like eating shit, honestly, against the best guys at UNH as a walk-on and like taking your punches all during that time, but thinking of it as investment. And
Well, yeah, 100%. Because I felt as though by the end of that year that I was at UNH, I was also then able to play right at their level.
yeah,
And then I was able to implement my game and branch out, you know.
right.
And at first I didn't know where I could do what I had practiced. I didn't know what to do when. But
Mm,
then it was then once I figured out, okay, this works there and that works here. And
mm,
it's almost like you just continue to build because I'm a read and react. I'm just building off of all of those different reads. And before I knew it, I was just competing at their speed.
yeah.
And I feel like that's the biggest thing that I kind of noticed was then once I got, through Division 1 and Division 2 was just how my game had evolved. And here I was, going from, you know, you go back all the way to Portsmouth and thinking like, oh yeah, I was like this post player, you know, where I was bigger and stronger, and then you become a slasher because
Mm,
you're quicker and, longer. And then all of a sudden, you know, everyone else is right there with you. And your game, you have to have a certain style to your game. There has to be something that you're providing
mm,
within your own skill set. Like everyone kind of has certain talents that they can build off of, but I feel like being able to know what it was that I was investing in. And I feel like something that really like just kind of opened my game was the shooting, was being
mm,
able, because up until I was in probably like eighth grade, like at 14, I didn't think that I could shoot.
sure.
I would only go to the basket.
Mm,
And if you were to ask me right now, you
mm,
know, I would tell you that there's probably only one person from New Hampshire that can shoot better than me.
yeah.
You know? So that's
Yeah,
it's just kind of
that's cool.
the game, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
gonna,
feel like
I'm gonna send that message to all our eighth grade big men that are in the same boat. It's like either
no,
coach is
it's what
telling
it
them,
is.
don't shoot, don't dribble because you're big guy standing in the basket. It's like, well, that's where Alex started, and
Yeah,
best shooter in New Hampshire. That's great. Uh,
100%.
so tell me now, from Southern Wesleyan, how did you make the transition to go pro and get a contract overseas? Like, I haven't heard that part of the story at all from you yet.
Well, it was interesting because
Yeah,
there I was, and I had seen a lot of my teammates having conversations with agents and whatnot, and I didn't really understand that realm until pretty recently.
sure.
What
It's
had
a whole
happened was,
universe in itself, for sure.
yeah, when I was in South Carolina, that was when I had gotten my passport. I started looking into different um just countries and what their leagues looked like. I was doing my research. Um, but it wasn't until I got to the summertime. It was early in the summertime. I want to say it was, I hadn't really even begun delving into many of my conversations with my network of searching before, excuse me, Coach Burt, he reached out and he told me about a potential team in Sheffield, England that he used to play for.
Mm,
It's called the Sheffield Arrows.
mm,
And he said that it's the same coach from when he was playing there, and
okay.
that one of his old teammates is the assistant coach. And I was like, all
Okay.
right. So I had already kind of taken the agency out of the equation just through my own, not what you know, but who you know.
Mm,
And I hopped onto a Zoom call with this head coach. He wanted to speak to me right away. Yeah, and I feel like Coach Burt, he's someone that really believes in me, and um, I feel as though that he was really pushing for me to go and to be able to continue kind of where he was because they hadn't had another American since him.
yeah.
And I ended up going through this program where I was being sponsored through the Sheffield College. Through the first Zoom call, I essentially received the yes, we want you to be on this team. It was like a getting to know each other. And
Mm,
I thought to myself that it sounded like a good gig. I was going to be a part of this basketball program that was an academy. And so a lot of the times overseas, they'll have they're a professional overarching team with age groups all underneath,
Yeah.
and they kind of feed their way through.
Right.
And I was meant to be there. I was meant to be going, and we'd be playing for the Sheffield Arrows, play for Sheffield Elite, which was also another Sheffield college team that was my sponsor. I was put on a student visa. I had this meeting. It was with a woman of the international office of the Sheffield College, the head coach, Johnny Kelly, of the Sheffield Arrows, and then this other gentleman. He was a member of the Sheffield College, just kind of the program I was enrolling in. And
Okay.
essentially, what we did was we enrolled me into a program so that I would have a government sponsored visa so that I could go and that I could play for the Sheffield Arrows.
Okay.
And I was staying there for 2 months, and there was a lot of promises being made just in terms of um, how I was going to get paid, how I was going to support myself, how I was going to be able to sustain and live.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it was just a very difficult situation. It was very, um, you know, it's not easy to be able to just up and uproot and then go to another country, you know.
Yeah.
Like
Sure. That's a
I've
big deal.
definitely
Mm.
knew that I was getting myself into something, but I was a little bit over ambitious,
Okay.
and I didn't, kind of do all of my due diligence because there I was. I had just gone through all of these hardships, and now someone was telling me you can start on my
Mm.
team,
Yeah.
and that's kind of I feel as though all I heard.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the basketball was a great experience. I got there, and I feel like from the jump, I had an immediate impact on that court, and I could see my investments paying off. I went from a year at UNH where I wasn't playing to a
Mm.
year at Southern Wesleyan where I was barely playing to now, well, during my time in England, over the course of 2 months, I think I played in 7 or 8 games, and I was playing something like 30 minutes, 35 minutes a game.
Nice.
It
Yeah.
was a really fun time.
Okay.
Um,
So the basketball was good, but the contract and the compensation wasn't there to make life
well, what
actually
happened
worth it.
was my visa, I'd just been steered wrong somewhere.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was because I didn't do enough research on my end or if someone on their end, um, regardless, the visa that I was on didn't allow me to claim any income.
Ah,
And so because of that, I made the ultimate decision to say to myself, okay, and I tried everything. I reached out to the home office, the international office, the
yeah.
sponsor, the college. I did everything.
Sure.
Nothing was working.
Okay.
So
So
I
because they
I
brought you in on a student visa, there was no income allowed based on that kind of thing.
but this was a brand new change that they had just made this year, and
Yeah.
there were things they weren't unaware of, and
Yeah.
it just it was a difficult situation to navigate. Luckily, I was able to still go through that experience and break through that threshold. I have that film, I have those statistics,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, I was able to have such a greater understanding of what I need when I want to go play basketball and what it is that, you know, at the end of the day keeps me going.
Yeah.
Because, over there, I was in my apartment. I had a flat little studio, and I would, just kind of be there. I'd be going to the gym and I'd be going to the basketball court. And then
Yeah.
we'd have games on the weekends.
Mm.
And I really just kind of cooked my food, and really that was where I learned, like, okay, for me to like sit with myself, like I had to do a lot of thinking for the first time. Like I was
Yeah.
really like just out there, and
Mm.
and anytime that I got on that court, like I knew that it was just, time for me to be a professional.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
walking away from that, it was hard, but I knew that if I were to just chew through my savings while not making any money, that it wouldn't be helping me. that it would be
Sure.
my pride. And
Yeah.
so what I ended up doing is I started hitting up all these different agencies, and I started reaching out to all of these different people on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot, and getting their WhatsApps, getting their emails, sending out resumes, sending out film. And I started that process while I was still in England, and it's continuing through now. So I want to say I left England right before the end of October,
Okay.
and um, yeah, so I was there. I was there for September and October, and then I've been back. I've had some I've had some opportunities being given to me to be able to go play in a situation where it's still considered an investment. So they'll cover my housing. I'd be able to go and be a part of a team,
Mm.
but um, I I don't foresee, me taking a mid-season contract, especially to some of the different countries that are being talked about. I'm right now I'm just in the process of knowing what I want and talking to my teammates who have been, you know, going overseas and have had these experiences, and I'm just getting all my information so that
Sure.
once I'm able then to, receive that opportunity, I'll know in my head, yep, this is the one.
Yeah.
And it's
It's a
definitely
big learning
something.
curve to just understand all the different possibilities out there and like all the different situations that are available, I'm sure, from, you pay us to come and live here and play to we'll cover your housing but no money to, something that's actually an income.
Yeah,
Everything
I feel as though that I'm right
across that
there.
spectrum.
It's interesting. The way that I would describe it is, I've been there's a lot of different there's some agencies, there's a lot of different agencies I'm talking to. There's some that are generally representing me. There's some that they've given me contracts and they want me to sign away my exclusive representation away to them.
Mm.
And and then there's a lot of deciphering between, what's real and what's not.
Sure.
And because there are some people out there that, they're not, as ethically sound when it comes to business, because this basketball
Mm.
is a business.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now I'm in this stage where I'm just trying to remain as bought in as possible, because if I wanted to, right, like if my pride was screaming at me, like, go play, like I could play right now. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And I could go to a country where, I'm, gonna have to buy my food and live and whatnot, but like there are accommodations for me. I
Right.
I just feel as though that I'm not in a place where I'm not in a place where I want to go do another tour overseas unless my my accommodation is all inclusive, and I'm not having to pay for, this or that. And I know that something that I've kind of gathered is that it's nearly impossible to be able to get that,
Mm.
every box checked.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that something's really got to speak to me,
Mm.
because for me right now, like this isn't a joke. Like this is my life. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like for anyone that's, really, you know, in a place where they say that they want to play basketball, that they want to, continue their career and get through that next level, whatever the threshold may be. Like what I'm doing right now is, while my patience is being tested, is I'm just continuing to better myself every day and doing
Mm.
what I can to to love myself, to heal, to become stronger, and to be equipped with a set of skills that will be utilized once that opportunity arises. And
Sure.
that preparation will then be why,
Mm.
when people look back, they'll say, oh, how, you know? And I'm at a point where I feel like all that it really takes is, those few good games,
Mm.
and a lot can change. Like a lot, I feel like with basketball, a lot can change really quickly because there's so much that happens underneath this iceberg, like within each player, within each individual situation, because all of our lives are so different. And I feel like there's so much that goes on that's outside of our own control
Yeah,
that being able to every day just pour into something and just
yeah,
being able to instill that discipline within yourself, that intrinsically will bring reward no matter what it looks like.
for sure.
And for me right now, like I'm an extremely blessed individual, like regardless of whatever my basketball career has looked like, the wins, the losses, you know, the 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 great moments and the not so great moments. Like I wouldn't trade my experience, no matter how hard it may be sometimes, to think, oh, what ifs, or think to myself, in a sense of comparisons. But for me, like I think that I'm a true testament of how hard work and dedication and passion are able to get you somewhere in this life. Because
Yeah.
for me, I was really at whims when it came to my situation off the court
Mm.
and just how my life looked.
Mm.
And basketball was more than just a game to me. It was an outlet, it was a therapist, it was a friend,
Mm.
it was everything to me.
Yeah.
And eventually, what happens is I feel like when you put so much energy into something, it turns into something. It's gonna amount.
Yeah.
And do I feel
A lot of persistence and preparation. Like I commend you on the. It sounds like the mentality shift that you're making is like actually I am a pro and I'm preparing like a pro and waiting for the right opportunity. Like that's kind of the best mindset you can have.
it's been, I mean, it's not
Mm.
been easy. I mean, life isn't easy.
Mm.
It's just it's it's how I feel for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't have any, you know, regret about anything
Mm.
because
That's important.
if I were to live my life and I were to hold on to things, then I'd be thinking about that. And for
Sure.
me, I want to be I want to be so precise and so in tune and so you know, finely kept that when it's time to do something, make a shot, pass the ball, attack the basket, that there's no skipping a beat. That
Mm.
everything, you know what I mean? It's I'm not even thinking about it. I'm able to just be instinctual. There's this one
Right.
quote that I really enjoy, and it's that um, you know that you're truly being yourself, like 100% being yourself when you stop second guessing your own thoughts. Like
Mm.
the ego is always going to second guess to try to protect, to try to, and it's like for what? You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
we might be we might be standing there waiting to take a charge, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And at the very last minute, like cover up. And
Yeah.
that's why it gets called as a block.
Yeah.
And it's like just things like that. Like, am I gonna go to the basket? Am I going to finish through this person's, hands in the air? Or am I gonna try to fade away and try to draw a foul? It's just these little things. And
Yeah.
I feel like so many of them amount. It's almost like every single player has their own, just every player has their own style that's comprised of all of these different little movements and
Yeah.
decisions that they
Instinctual
make.
decision making. Yeah. I think
And
there's really a lot to that.
that's what I'm trying to, I guess, figure out how to be the best at.
Yeah.
I feel like the read and the react and the and just knowing what my defender and what the rest of the defense is going to do
Mm.
so before they do it so that I
Yeah.
can then do what I want to do.
Yeah,
And
I love that. That's where a lot of my brain time has been spent the last couple of years. Is like training decision making kind of on that. It's like anticipating what the defense is going to do to react to what I already did and trigger what my next move is. Like there's a lot of depth to that just idea.
yeah,
Cool. Well, this has been great to hear your whole story. I want to wrap up with a final question I like to ask everybody that I interview is what's your best advice to parents given the state of the game of basketball and the state of culture and everything? Like having gone through what you've experienced, how would you advise parents, which are most of our listeners, how to guide their child that loves basketball and wants to take that plunge toward playing in college?
I think my best advice to anyone who has a child that says that they love basketball and that they want to go play in college is to nurture that with care and to, at the end of the day, always make sure that their child is having fun.
Mm,
Because at times, even when basketball gets difficult, it's going to be fun. Like I
mm,
can sit and I can think to myself about a lot of times where it didn't feel fun in that moment, maybe, but
mm,
man, do I wish I could go and I could play like those games again.
yeah. Right.
And and I think the most important thing is that you're able to remember that they're playing something and it could mean something to them and it's going to mean something different to you.
Mm,
That when you hear the word basketball, that it might mean something different to your kid because I know that basketball to me, that's like when someone is if someone were to say, "Oh, basketball is blank."
mm.
Instantly in my brain, I go, "Oh, I'm what you know what I mean?" And I relate it
Right.
direct. That's how impactful and important this sport is to
Yeah,
someone who truly loves it. Is
sure.
it consumes you and it becomes your identity and that's why I say just ensure that there's a tenderness and a care whenever you're consulting because at the end of the day, there's going to be difficult conversations. There's going to be, you know, reality checks. And
Hmm.
and and there's going to be moments where, you also have to be a good winner. You have to be a
Yeah.
good sport. You have to be a good winner and loser. You got to count your wins no matter how big or small, but you also can't get too far knocked down. I feel like
Mhm.
I feel like the best advice is stay as even keeled as possible.
Yeah.
And that's,
There's a lot to that. I think, especially young players, they're gonna be really volatile as they go through stuff, and so like
yeah, it's
parents
it's just a
being
matter of support.
that steadying support, I think is really good advice. That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks, Alex. This has been really good to hear your whole story. Appreciate you coming on.
No problem. I feel like I've just been yapping, so